The grand hall of the London Community Centre buzzed with excitement. Chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables, adorned with white lilies and gold ribbons. Tonight was the annual charity gala supporting education for underprivileged youth, and everyone who mattered in London seemed to be there. Michael "Big Shaq" Davies adjusted his bow tie nervously. At 35, the British Ghanaian entertainer had achieved fame through his music and comedy. But speaking about his journey from council housing to success still made him anxious. His manager, Thomas, patted his shoulder. "You'll be brilliant. Mate, just be yourself," Thomas said, glancing around the room. "These people donated thousands just to hear you speak." Emma Wilson, the event organizer with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Davies, we're so honored to have you. Your story inspires so many young people in our programs." Michael nodded gratefully. "My old neighborhood is why I'm here. Education changed everything for me." As Emma led him toward the stage, Michael caught glimpses of familiar faces, politicians, business leaders, and even a few celebrities. But one person stood out, an elderly woman in an expensive blue dress watching him with unmistakable disgust. He pushed the observation aside as Emma introduced him to thunderous applause. Taking a deep breath, Michael stepped onto the stage, unaware that this night would become about much more than charity. Michael looked out at the sea of faces. His heart beat fast against his ribs. He thought of his childhood home, the small flat where his parents had worked so hard to give him and his sisters a good life. The memory gave him strength. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his deep voice filling the room. "Thank you for coming tonight to support a cause very close to my heart." The crowd grew quiet. Even the waiters stopped to listen. Michael told them about growing up in East London, where many kids didn't believe they had a future worth dreaming about. "I was lucky," he said. "I had teachers who saw something in me when I couldn't see it myself. I had parents who pushed me to work hard, even when it seemed pointless. Not every child has that." As he spoke, Michael noticed the elderly woman in blue whispering to her table companions. Her eyes never left him, and the look of distaste on her face only grew stronger. He wondered who she was and why she seemed to hate him before they'd even met. Michael continued his speech, sharing stories that made people laugh and others that brought tears to their eyes. He talked about the music teacher who had given him his first chance to perform. He described the library where he'd spent countless hours reading books that took him far beyond his neighborhood. "Education isn't just about exams and grades," he said passionately. "It's about showing young people that their lives have value and purpose. It's about giving them the tools to build their own futures." The crowd nodded in agreement. Many reached for their checkbooks, inspired by his words. While Michael spoke, Thomas stood at the back of the room, watching proudly. He had discovered Michael performing at small clubs 5 years ago. Back then, Michael had been talented but unsure of himself. Now he commanded the attention of some of the most powerful people in Britain. Emma stood nearby, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She had fought hard to get Michael as the speaker tonight. Some board members had wanted a politician instead. Now she knew she had been right. As Michael reached the end of his speech, he thought about the kids from his old neighborhood who would benefit from tonight's fundraising. "Every child deserves to know that their dreams matter," he said. "That their future matters. With your help, we can make that happen. Thank you." The applause was immediate and thunderous. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Michael bowed his head, feeling both proud and humble at the same time. Only the woman in blue remained seated, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as Michael left the stage. Emma rushed over to congratulate him. "That was wonderful. You've already helped us raise more tonight than we did all of last year." Several people lined up to shake his hand. A famous football player asked for a selfie with him. A government minister told him his speech had changed her mind about education funding. Through it all, Michael kept one eye on the woman in blue. She was watching him, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. He couldn't understand what he had done to make her so angry. "Who is that woman?" he asked Emma quietly, nodding toward the blue dress. Emma's smile faded slightly. "That's Patricia Harrington. Her family foundation gives a lot of money to charity, but—" she hesitated. "She can be difficult. Don't worry about her." But Michael did worry. He had faced people who judged him unfairly before. Usually he tried to win them over with kindness and humor. It had worked most of the time. "I think I'll go introduce myself," he said to Emma. "Are you sure?" Emma looked concerned. "The reception is about to start. You'll be busy enough." "It's fine," Michael assured her. "Everyone deserves a chance to be heard." He didn't know that this simple decision would change the course of the evening and touch the lives of countless people in ways he couldn't imagine. "Thank you all for supporting these incredible educational initiatives," Michael said, concluding his speech 20 minutes later. The audience rose in standing ovation, moved by his story of determination despite the odds. The reception afterward flowed with champagne and conversation. Michael spoke with donors, took photographs, and shared laughs with everyone who approached. The night felt magical until he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find the elderly woman in the blue dress. Her name tag read, "Patricia Harrington Foundation." Her lips were pursed tight, her eyes narrowed. "Quite the performance," she said, voice dripping with disdain. "Though I wonder if all this money might be better spent elsewhere." Michael maintained his smile. "Education transforms lives, Mrs. Harrington. I'm living proof." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand gripped her champagne flute tighter. "Yes, well, some investments yield better returns than others." The conversation around them quieted as people began to notice the tension. "I'm not sure I follow," Michael said carefully. Patricia's voice rose slightly. "Let me be clear then. People, like you are guests here. If you find our country so problematic, perhaps you should just go back to Africa where you belong." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. In the terrible silence that followed, Michael felt every eye on him, saw phones recording the moment, waiting for his reaction. The room seemed to freeze. Michael could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Time slowed down as he processed what had just happened. Around him, faces showed shock, anger, and embarrassment. A waiter who had been passing by with drinks stood still, mouth open in surprise. Thomas, who had been chatting with a group nearby, turned sharply at the commotion. His face darkened with anger as he began pushing through the crowd toward Michael. Emma, too, was rushing over, her expression horrified. Patricia Harrington stood tall, her chin lifted defiantly. She seemed to enjoy the scene she had created. The pearl necklace around her neck gleamed under the chandelier light as she took another sip of champagne, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. "I beg your pardon," Michael finally said, his voice calm despite the storm inside him. He wanted to be sure he had heard her correctly, though the gasps from the crowd confirmed he had. "So you heard me," Patricia replied. Her voice was louder now, as if she wanted everyone to hear. "All this talk about how hard things were for you, how difficult Britain has been. Well, no one forced your people to come here." A man standing beside Patricia, perhaps her husband, tugged gently at her arm. "Patricia, that's enough," he whispered urgently. She shook him off. "No, Henry, it needs to be said. Everyone tiptoes around the truth these days." Michael felt a rush of emotions, hurt, anger, shock, but most of all he felt sad. Sad that on a night meant to celebrate education and opportunity, this woman could only see the color of his skin. Thomas reached them, stepping protectively beside Michael. "I think you should leave," he said to Patricia, his voice tight with controlled anger. "It's all right, Thomas," Michael said quietly, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. He had faced racism before, as a child in school, as a young artist trying to break into the industry, and now as a successful man at a charity event. Each time he had a choice about how to respond. His grandmother's words came back to him. "When someone shows you their ugliness, you can either match it or rise above it. Rising takes more strength, but it's always worth it." Emma was there now too, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Mrs. Harrington, I must ask you to—" Michael gently interrupted. "Emma, please, allow me to handle this." The crowd watched in tense silence. Several people had phones out recording everything. Whatever happened next would likely be online within minutes, seen by thousands or even millions. Michael took a deep breath. He looked directly at Patricia, seeing not just her anger, but perhaps her fear too, fear of a changing world she didn't understand. "Mrs. Harrington," he began, his voice strong and clear, I was born in Birmingham General Hospital. My father worked as a bus driver for 30 years. My mother cleaned offices at night so she could care for us during the day. I studied at British schools, played football in British parks, and yes, faced challenges in British society. He paused, letting his words sink in. But tonight isn't about me, it's about children who need our help. All children, regardless of their background. Children who deserve a chance to learn and grow and contribute to this country we both call home. Patricia's face flushed. She hadn't expected this response. She'd expected anger, outrage, perhaps even for him to prove her point by acting aggressively. So instead of arguing with you, Michael continued, I'd like to invite you to visit one of the schools this charity supports. See for yourself what your donation is accomplishing. Meet the children whose lives are being changed. Then judge whether the investment is worthwhile. The tension in the room began to shift. Someone in the back started to applaud, and others joined in. Michael hadn't raised his voice or insulted Patricia. He hadn't demanded she be removed. Instead, he had responded with dignity and an invitation to understanding. Patricia stood frozen, uncertain how to react. The phone cameras were still rolling. Her husband looked mortified. The crowd waited to see what would happen next, and in that moment, as Michael stood tall amidst the tension, he realized that this confrontation, painful as it was, might become the most important part of the evening. Because sometimes the greatest lessons happen not in classrooms, but in moments of crisis, when people must choose between division and understanding. Time seemed to slow as Michael absorbed Patricia's words. Behind her, security guards began moving forward. Thomas stepped toward them, face flushed with anger, but Michael raised his hand slightly, stopping them all. In that frozen moment, memories flooded through him. His grandmother, Ruth, sitting him down at age 10 after bullies had taunted him at school. Your response to hatred defines you more than the hatred itself, she'd said, her voice gentle but firm. Choose wisdom over anger, always. He remembered his father, James, working double shifts as a bus driver, studying for his teaching degree, at night. Education isn't just about books, he'd explained. It's about understanding the world and the people in it, even those who don't understand you. The charity gala waited in suspended animation. Michael could feel the weight of the moment, not just for himself, but for every child who might someday watch this clip online. He could respond with justified anger or cutting humor. He could have security remove Patricia. He could walk away. Instead, Michael made a different choice. Mrs. Harrington, he said, his voice steady and amplified in the quiet room, would you join me on stage for a moment? I believe there's something important we could share with everyone here tonight. Confusion replaced the tension in Patricia's face. The crowd murmured, uncertain what was happening. Please, Michael added, extending his hand. It would honor me. After a long hesitation, Patricia stiffly nodded and followed him toward the stage. The security guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. Thomas made a small gesture that said, "What are you doing?" But Michael just gave him a reassuring nod as he gently guided Patricia through the crowd. People stepped back to make a path, their eyes wide with surprise. No one had expected this turn of events. Many still held their phones up, recording everything. The bright lights of the hall seemed to follow Michael and Patricia as they walked toward the stage. Patricia's face was a mix of emotions, confusion, stubbornness, and perhaps a touch of fear. She hadn't planned for this. She had expected Michael to get angry or walk away. His invitation had thrown her off balance. "I don't understand what you're doing," she whispered as they approached the steps to the stage. "Just giving us both a chance to be heard," Michael replied quietly. As they climbed the steps, Michael thought again of his grandmother, Ruth. She had come to England from Ghana in the 1950s as a young nurse. Despite the cold weather and colder welcome she sometimes received, she had built a life filled with kindness and wisdom. "When someone pushes you down," she always said, "stand up twice, once for yourself and once for those who cannot stand." Emma rushed to the stage, her face full of worry. "Michael, are you sure about this?" she whispered. He nodded. "Trust me, Emma. Sometimes the hardest conversations need to happen in the open." Emma looked uncertain but stepped back. She signaled, to the sound technician to turn on the microphones. The crowd fell silent as Michael and Patricia took center stage. The spotlight found them, creating a bright circle that seemed to separate them from everyone else in the room. Patricia blinked. In the sudden light, her blue dress shimmering. She looked smaller somehow, less certain than she had been moments ago. Michael turned to face her first, not the audience. This wasn't a performance for the crowd. It was a chance for real understanding. "Mrs. Harrington," he began, his voice calm and respectful despite what had just happened. "Before we speak to everyone, I want to ask you something. When you look at me, what do you see?" Patricia seemed startled by the question. She hesitated, then lifted her chin. "I see someone who doesn't appreciate what this country has given. Him." Michael nodded, taking in her words without anger. "And what has this country given me, in your view?" "Opportunity," she said firmly. "A better life than you would have had elsewhere. Safety. Freedom." Michael considered this. "You're right. About the opportunities," he said, "and I'm grateful for them every day. That's why I'm here tonight, trying to create those same opportunities for others." Patricia's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted slightly. "When I look at you," Michael continued, "I see someone who cares deeply about tradition and values, someone who has probably given a lot to causes she believes in, someone who wants to protect what matters to her." Patricia seemed surprised by his words. She had expected judgment, not understanding. "May I share something with you and everyone here?" Michael asked. After a moment, she nodded. Michael turned to address the room, but kept his body angled so that Patricia remained included in the conversation. The audience watched in complete silence, barely breathing. "When I was 10 years old," Michael began, "a group of boys at school surrounded me in the playground. They pushed me and called me names. They told me I didn't belong in their school, in their neighborhood, in their country." Patricia shifted uncomfortably beside him. "That night, my grandmother sat me down at our kitchen table. She had come to England as a young nurse to help build the National Health Service. She had faced much worse than I ever did." Michael's voice grew stronger as he continued. "She told me something I never forgot. She said, 'Michael, your response to hatred defines you more than the hatred itself. Choose wisdom over anger, always.'" Several people in the audience nodded. Some wiped away tears. "My father worked double shifts driving buses. At night, he studied for his teaching degree. He wanted to show me that education could open doors that seemed locked." Michael turned slightly toward Patricia again. "He told me education isn't just about books. It's about understanding the world and the people in it, even those who don't understand you." Patricia's face had softened just a bit. The harsh lines around her mouth seemed less pronounced. "Mrs. Harrington, I didn't invite you up here to shame you or argue with you," Michael said. "I invited you because I believe we both care about this country. We both want it to be the best it can be. We just see different paths to that future." The room was completely still. Even the waiters had stopped to listen. "So instead of anger, instead of division, I'd like to offer something else," Michael said, extending his hand toward Patricia once more. "A chance for us to learn from each other, to find common ground, to show all these young people watching us right now that even the hardest conversations can lead to understanding." Patricia looked at his outstretched hand. The whole room seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what she would do. Emma quickly arranged for microphones as Michael guided Patricia to center stage. The audience watched in bewildered silence. Thomas shot Michael a concerned look, but Michael gave a reassuring nod. "Mrs. Harrington just expressed something that I think deserves our attention," Michael began, his voice warm but serious. "She suggested I go back to Africa." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Patricia stared straight ahead, her posture rigid. "I'd like to tell you about my grandfather, William Davies," Michael continued. "He served in the Royal Air Force during World War II. His aircraft was shot down over France in 1944, and he spent 8 months helping the French resistance before making it home to London." Michael turned slightly toward Patricia. "My family has lived in Birmingham for 4 generations. I was born in the same hospital as my father. I supported West Ham since I could walk. I complain about the weather and drink too much tea." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. But I'm also proud of my Ghanaian heritage, and he continued. My grandmother Ruth came here in 1950 as a nurse. She taught me proverbs of wisdom that guided my life. The Africa you want me to go back to has given the world incredible art, literature, and innovation that we benefit from every day. Michael looked directly at Patricia now. The boundaries between us are lines drawn on maps, not in our shared humanity. The children we're supporting tonight don't see those boundaries. They just see opportunity and hope. Tears had begun to form in Patricia's eyes. The large hall was completely silent. Even the clink of glasses and soft footsteps of the waiters had stopped. Everyone was frozen, listening to every word. The bright lights made the tears in Patricia's eyes shine like tiny diamonds. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out an old worn photograph. He held it up so Patricia and the audience could see it. It showed a young man in a Royal Air Force uniform, standing tall and proud. "This is my grandfather William," Michael said softly. "He was just 19 when this photo was taken. 3 months later, his plane was hit by enemy fire over France." Patricia's gaze fixed on the photograph. Her hands trembled slightly. "He parachuted into a field near a small French village," Michael continued. "His leg was badly hurt, but a French family hid him in their barn. They risked their lives to keep him safe from the Nazis." Michael's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "For 8 months, my grandfather helped the French resistance. He sent coded messages back to England. He helped downed Allied pilots escape. And when he finally made it home to London, he was given a medal for bravery." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people nodded with respect. "After the war, my grandfather met my grandmother Ruth at a hospital in London. She had come from Ghana to train as a nurse. They fell in love, got married, and raised 3 children in Birmingham." Michael put the photo back in his pocket, close to his heart. "Every Sunday when I was a boy, we would visit my grandparents for dinner. My grandfather would tell me stories about the war, about courage and sacrifice. My grandmother would teach me proverbs from Ghana, about wisdom and kindness." Patricia's rigid posture began to soften. The tears in her eyes were now sliding down her cheeks, but she made no move to wipe them away. "Mrs. Harrington," Michael said gently, "when you tell me to go back to Africa, which part of me should go? The part that loves football and complains about English weather? The part that went to English schools and speaks with an English accent? Or just the part that has darker skin?" Patricia opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. "And if I were to go back to Africa," Michael continued, "should my grandfather's medal for bravery go with me? Should his service to this country be forgotten?" In the audience, an elderly man in a row near the front slowly stood up. He was wearing a row of medals on his chest. He nodded at Michael with respect and remained standing. Then another person stood, and another. Soon, a dozen people were on their feet. They weren't applauding. They were simply standing in silent support. Michael saw this and nodded gratefully. He turned back to Patricia. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm not angry with you," he said, "because I understand that fear often lies behind words like yours. Fear of change, fear of losing something important to you." Patricia's face crumpled slightly. Her husband Henry was watching from the front row, his expression a mix of shame and sadness. "But here's what I've learned," Michael said, his voice rising with passion. "We don't have to fear each other. Britain isn't made weaker by its diversity. It's made stronger." He gestured toward the audience. "Look around this room. People of different backgrounds, different beliefs, different experiences, all united tonight for one purpose, to help children build better lives." Patricia looked out at the crowd for the first time since coming onto the stage. She saw the standing people, the emotional faces, the unity in the room. "The children we're helping tonight don't care about borders or backgrounds," Michael said. "They just want a chance to learn, to grow, to contribute. They want what all children want, to be seen for who they are, not judged for where they come from." Patricia's tears were flowing freely now. Her shoulders shook slightly. The woman who had been so confident, so dismissive just minutes earlier, now looked small and uncertain. Michael reached out slowly and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "My grandmother Ruth used to say that a river doesn't become less itself. When new streams flow into it, it becomes greater, it carries more life. A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Britain has always been like that river, Michael continued, growing stronger with each new stream that joins it. My grandfather's courage, my grandmother's wisdom, my parents' hard work, my music, and yes, Mrs. Harrington, your passion for tradition and values. Patricia's hand tightened slightly around Michael's. She looked up at him, really seeing him, perhaps for the first time. We don't have to agree on everything, Michael said softly, but can we agree that every child deserves a chance? Can we agree that what unites us is stronger than what divides us? Patricia nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first, then more definitely. The room held its breath, witnessing a moment of transformation that went beyond words.